They still speak of the Academy of 10,000 Suns as if it were carved out of myth, though in truth it was a construct of alloy and ambition, an orbiting fortress where the finest species of the Orion Concord came to prove that excellence could be engineered. Around a dying red giant it floated, its shield shimmering with solar decay, a cathedral for endurance, intellect, and command. Every cycle, recruits were brought there from 100 worlds. Scaled, feathered, crystalline, or soft-skinned, each sworn to surpass the limits of their kind. Records note the day when a single human was admitted. The reason is still debated. Some say it was a gesture of diplomacy after the Solar Accords. Others whisper it was mockery, an experiment to measure how far a primitive could endure before breaking. The files list his name simply as Corporal Elias Ward, Terran Defense Corps, age 29. To the cadets, he was flesh and fragility wrapped in standard fatigues, out of place among chitin and plasma veins. Observers described the arrival without grandeur. A transport descended through the Academy's halo of radiation, sealing into Dock 7. From within stepped a being whose posture spoke not of arrogance but quiet containment, as if every movement was calculated to reveal nothing. The aliens watched him pass, the Nereans with their translucent armor, the Varkal whose blood shimmered like mercury, the towering Kareen whose lungs processed methane. Each species carried the confidence of genetic perfection. The human carried a duffel bag and the faint smell of oil and earth. At orientation, Admiral Zaid's voice echoed to the chamber like thunder striking metal. His 6 eyes scanned the ranks. Endurance, he declared, is the first law of command. Without it, victory is only borrowed. The cadets clicked mandibles and flared membranes in acknowledgement. Behind them, Elias stood motionless, absorbing the words as if memorizing scripture. When Zaid's gaze met the humans, a flicker of disdain passed across his central eye. Even among the lesser species, he said, there is curiosity. You will all face the same measure. The trial of continuance begins in one rotation. The last one standing will command respect. The rest will study failure. Rumors spread like plasma fire through the dormitories at night. The human would not last an hour, they said. His species' lungs were inefficient, his circulation primitive, his body a relic of meat and bone. Some planned wagers on how long before he collapsed. Yet others, quieter voices, wondered why he had come at all. Elias lay on his bunk staring at the ceiling's faint hum of energy conduits. He thought of nothing noble, only of home, of rain against tin roofs, of running across mud fields during drills on Earth. He had no illusion of glory. He whispered himself the single phrase his old sergeant had drilled into him during war training. One more step. It had carried him through frost, starvation, and the long nights when battlefields froze under silence. He repeated it until sleep found him. The following day, the cadets assembled on the endurance field, a circular track spanning kilometers, bordered by energy pylons that marked the sensors. No weapons, no suits, no nourishment except hydration units. The rule was simple. Run until you cannot. Collapse meant elimination. Stopping meant failure. The challenge was not of speed, but persistence. From the observation tower, officers recorded biological data across species. The challenge had been designed generations ago to push even the enhanced bodies of the Concord beyond safety limits. Muscles would liquefy. Neural centers would overheat. Most cadets never reached the 10th hour. That was the lesson. Elias stretched in silence, while others displayed their anatomy with pride. Gills opening, tendons tightening under bioluminescent skin. A Korean cadet approached him, smirking through a mask that filtered ammonia. Human, it rasped. Your bones will turn to dust before the first break. Elias met its compound eyes and said nothing. The translator implant recorded no response to translate. At 0 hour, a tone resonated through the atmosphere, and the cadets began to move. From above, they looked like rings of color revolving around the core, some bounding with 4 legs, others gliding on hover pulses. The human's motion was simple. Foot to ground, breath to breath. Analysts later noted his pattern was inefficient by alien standards, yet unnervingly stable. Within the first hour, laughter echoed among the faster species as they surged ahead, treating the human as background motion. By hour 2, their voices quieted. His pace had not changed. By hour 3, his heartbeat maintained a slow climb instead of the expected spike. He ran as if anchored to something invisible. Records from drone telemetry show his eyes fixed forward, mouth forming silent patterns. Experts later identified fragments of Terran language. Step, breathe, again. The simplicity unsettled those who observed. By hour 4, the first cadet fell. A varcal collapsed when its cooling vents failed, molten fluid seeping into the sand. Med drones retrieved the body, marking elimination. Hour 5 claimed 2 more. One Nihirian whose neural feedback loop short-circuited, another whose carapace cracked under strain. Still, the human moved. Spectators in the amphitheater began murmuring. A primitive body should not outlast engineered endurance systems. Analysts checked for stimulants. None were found. His vitals suggested strain, but no breakdown. He drank water sparingly, wiped sweat with the back of his hand, and kept running. When his feet bled to fabric, he adjusted his gait without pause. Admiral Zide watched from the tower, his mandibles tightening. "Increase temperature by 2 degrees, he ordered. "Let us test the threshold." The field shimmered as heat radiated upward. Dozens of cadets faltered, gasping through respirators. The human slowed fractionally, shoulders rolling as if adjusting to memory rather than discomfort. Inside his mind there was no narrative of defiance, only repetition, one more step. He remembered a winter march across frozen Europe during training, lungs burning while his sergeant shouted from a jeep, "Run until the cold forgets your name." The same ache returned, familiar as an old friend. Hour 6 arrived with the collapse of 27 species. Some fell screaming, others simply stopped moving. Drones lifted them away. The air was thick with chemical exhalations, ozone, and the metallic scent of alien blood. In the center of the field, a lone human shape continued to move, each stride slower yet precise. Silence rippled through the observers. A historian centuries later would call it the moment arrogance met mystery. For the first time, the Academy realized it was witnessing something outside its parameters. The endurance trial had been created to measure physiology, not spirit. The human introduced a variable they had no equation for. Transmissions of the event spread across the Concorde networks. Civilian channels tuned in. Commentators speculated about Earth's gravity, atmosphere, or genetic quirks. None mentioned will. The Admiral requested the run continue, without interruption. "We will see," he said, "how far instinct can masquerade as strength." Medical officers monitored internal heat levels. At this point, most species' organs would begin shutting down. Elias's readings showed dangerous spikes but continued function. Neural patterns indicated rhythmic self-hypnosis, a state humans call flow. By the time the 12th hour began, the arena had fallen into an unnatural quiet. The hum of environmental systems replaced the roar of cadet voices. What remained of competitors moved like ghosts through vapor heat. Each one stretched beyond its limits. Above, the dying star threw weak flares across the transparent dome, painting everything in bruised light. Only 24 cadets still moved, and among them, the human. Records show that his vitals continued to confuse the analysts. Heart rate, elevated but stable. Core temperature, dangerously high yet somehow regulated by sheer will or instinct. They debated whether it was madness or mastery. The conclusion, later written into the archives, stated, "Subject persists against physiological failure through unknown mental conditioning." The Nihirians dropped at hour 13, their bodies incapable of dispersing accumulated toxins. At 14, the methane breathers of Careen collapsed when oxygen traces became too concentrated. Each fall drew less attention. The observers were transfixed by the same figure that had not stopped since the signal began. The human moved not with speed but inevitability. Within the control center, Admiral Zide's voice softened. "This is not competition anymore," he said to his adjutant. "This is instruction." The younger officer asked what he meant. Zide did not answer. During the 15th hour, the last of the winged species fell, folding their metallic feathers with a hiss of failure. The human's breathing turned audible through the microphones. It was not steady now. It rasped like friction, but the rhythm endured. Analysts speculated that each inhalation triggered microscopic damage, yet his pace refused to break. The body continued because the mind demanded it. Somewhere deep in his consciousness, Elias Ward counted in silence. The numbers had lost meaning. They were placeholders to keep his awareness tethered. Each step became a world unto itself. He did not run to win. He ran to remember that motion was survival. Memories bled into the present. Rain on rooftops, the smell of old sweat-soaked uniforms, laughter in barracks. The brain was emptying itself of everything except continuity. Hour 16. Sensors began failing to calibrate the human's muscle output. The readouts suggested he should no longer be capable of balance. The analysts assumed the system malfunctioned. It hadn't. The human's nervous system had switched to emergency efficiency, a state that alien physiology never achieved because no species of the Concord had ever needed to. Pain for them was always termination. Pain for humans was negotiation. By hour 18, the field resembled a graveyard of determination. Medical drones glided constantly, collecting the fallen, spraying coolant, sealing pods. Only 4 cadets remained apart from a human. One of them, a 6-limbed Irian, turned its crystalline eyes toward Elias and uttered, "What are you?" The translator rendered his voice as a tremor. Elias did not respond. The Irian fell minutes later, its limbs convulsing before going still. Historians later replayed those final steps of the Irian beside the human's unbroken motion. They concluded that moment symbolized the shift of the trial from spectacle to revelation. Hour 20 approached. In the audience tiers, silence had turned into reverence. Broadcast networks across star systems were now running the feed uninterrupted. Commentators struggled to find words. Phrases like biological anomaly and behavioral defiance appeared repeatedly. Still, none captured the truth. The human simply refused to end. Inside the control room, one of the med officers, species unrecorded, suggested halting the event. "We risk killing him," they warned. Zaid's reply entered history logs exactly as spoken. "Then we will learn how death negotiates with his kind." At hour 21, the human stumbled. It was the first visible deviation since the beginning. His balance faltered, one knee hit the dust, but he rose instantly. The sound that escaped him was half growl, half breath, across the viewing decks. Even those who had doubted him found themselves leaning forward. There was no triumph in the act, only inevitability, as if gravity itself had failed to claim him. Later analysis of his neuroscan showed an intense surge of activity in regions associated with emotion, memory, and pain suppression. They theorized that he was reliving something, an internal trial overlapping the physical one. Whatever image drove him, it possessed a weight of survival instinct shaped by countless generations of hardship. Hour 24 marked a full rotation. Only 2 cadets besides a human remained. Their names were recorded, Talon of the Silith and Aurochs of the Vir Dominion. Both were enhanced through genetic adaptation and cybernetic implants. Yet when the 25th hour began, Talon's circuits overheated and fused. Aurochs lasted 3 more hours before its exoskeleton cracked. The med drones removed them in silence. From that point, the test became singular. A lone runner on a scarred field beneath a collapsing star. The Academy's algorithms failed to classify it as a contest anymore. They marked it as an anomaly event. Elias Ward continued. His lips moved without sound now. Analysts enhanced the audio and later identified fragments of song. Something from Earth, melodic, repetitive, primitive but steady. Psychologists later argued that humans use rhythm to override exhaustion, a trait absent in most advanced species. The 20th hour arrived with new orders from the Admiral. No interference. Observe and record until cessation. Some officers interpreted this as cruelty. Others understood it as reverence. At hour 30, Elias's legs trembled uncontrollably. The sensors registered tearing along the quadriceps and microfractures in the tibia. By all medical standards, movement should have ceased. He kept running. Not efficiently now. His body listed to one side, head dipping low. But each motion carried the same intention. Continuation. The biological monitors described his heart rate, plateauing at a dangerous constant. The organ should have failed from stress. Instead, it synchronized with his cadence. The term entrained cardiac persistence was coined decades later to describe this phenomenon, first observed in this moment. Hour 36 brought new spectators, off-duty officers, researchers, even civilians granted temporary passes. They lined the observation decks, watching in silence. For the first time in the Academy's history, every species in the Concorde stood together without rivalry, focused on one solitary figure of flesh and blood from a backwater planet. Elias's inner world had shrunk entirely to motion. The part of him that knew language was fading. He felt pain as geometry, sharp at the joints, dull in the spine. When his vision blurred, he followed sound, the thud of his own steps, the hiss of wind. He no longer asked why he ran. The question belonged to others. For him, only running remained. Hour 41. The Admiral spoke softly into the comms. Witness this, and remember why they survived their wars. It was the first acknowledgement that this was not about competition, but understanding. A minor flare from the red giant struck the arena shields at hour 42, flooding everything in crimson. The human's shadow stretched long and flickering. In the transmission archives, this image became iconic, the lone silhouette running through blood-colored light, while every other shape lay still.